Hello and welcome to The Haunted Show. My name is Shivang Rajpal, and today our guest is Mr. Anirban Bhattacharya, who's an author, an actor, and a stand up comedian. He grew up in a boarding school in Kalampur, and he mentioned that he had a paranormal experience. So, sir will tell us about that today.
I must have been in class 9. उस रात हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे थे भूतिया स्टोरीज ऐसे वैसे एंड आई रिमेंबर सो आई टोल्ड देम दैट व्हेन आई वाज कमिंग बैक फ्रॉम स्कूल छुट्टी के बाद माय ग्रैंडफादर ही हैड हग्ड मी एंड सेड कि आई वोंट सी यू अगेन. So I said ki, and I was very close to my grandfather. So I said, I'll be back after my exam. 2-3 महीने में मैं वापस आऊँगा छुट्टी पे. So he said, no, that will be too late. So उस रात I was telling my friends कि दादू ने ऐसा कहा था. अच्छा ये वो करके and then we went to sleep. सपने में all I saw was one album in which my grandfather's picture was there, smiling. And as I kept turning the pages, it was the same photograph over and over and over again. And I woke up. When I woke up, he was standing at the foot of my bed. And it was very clear. It wasn't my imagination or, he was standing at the foot of my bed. And I was shocked. And I got scared. And that was... Next morning, it was a Sunday. Next morning, some office का जो पियोन वगैरह होता है बोर्डिंग स्कूल का, तो वो आके मिला और मुझे बोला कि हेडमास्टर तुमने घर बुलाया है. हेडमास्टर ने अभी सोचो कि संडे को हेडमास्टर घर बुला रहा है, यानी तो यू बीन इन सम ट्रबल. सो ऑल माय फ्रेंड्स स्टार्टेड सेइंग, अरे यार, नाउ यू गोइंग टू गेट केन्ड, यू डन सम मिस्चिफ. आई सेड, नो, आई हैव नॉट डन एनी मिस्चिफ. सो व्हेन आई वेंट देयर, दैट्स व्हेन the headmaster broke the news that my grandfather had passed away, and he had passed away 3 days before. So I had no clue that he had passed away. Right?
Correct.
So what I think is that he probably came to say goodbye, to have that one last meeting. Sorry. It's so he came to say goodbye, and that was that. So I remember going back home for his Shraddh ceremony, and my auntie and I, we were in the room. We were just having a chat and going through our memories of our grandfather, and we distinctly felt a weight in the room, and there was a creaking of a chair across the room, and we knew he was in the room, that he was around. And so that was my very emotional but paranormal experience.
Did this thing changed anything in you, like after this happened? Of course, there are kind of emotions which come inside you. Did this thing change anything in you or your writings or something like that?
I believe in the afterlife. I believe that there are spirits around me. A lot of people don't believe in ghosts. They think it's imagination. I don't think so. I believe that there are ghosts. I believe that there are spirits. There are good spirits and there are bad spirits. If you do something called past life regression, you come to know that all of us have a guardian angel or a guardian spirit who looks after you. I believe it's my grandfather. when I did my session of past life regression, I saw him. I believe that he still looks over me sometimes. May not be happy with some of the stuff I do, but I think he does. And so I believe that there is an afterlife. Even if you read the books about laws of the spiritual world by Bhavnagri, she was a mother who lost her 2 children in an accident. Then she contacted, someone came and told her that your sons want to get in touch with you, and a medium.
Correct.
So she said, bullshit, I don't believe in all of this. But she went, and then she made contact with the 2 children, and the 2 children told her about the afterlife and all of that. So there is an afterlife, and I miss my grandfather. That's something, because he was my first best friend.
Correct.
Yeah,
Is there anything you ever felt that, so like you said that, you have a guardian angel always, so for you that's your grandfather. Has there any experience which made you feel that there's a negative spirit ever? Have you felt that kind of thing ever in your life?
Negative, I don't.
Or any place you visited, for your research?
Yeah, negative. Like, there are lots of places which give you bad vibes.
Yeah.
Like a negative energy. You immediately start feeling, uneasy.
Correct.
So there have been places where certain houses have given me, like कि वो पीठ के जो बाल खड़े हो जाते हैं,
correct.
Oh, and then you start feeling a little disgusted. I have a very strong nose, so I pick up smells. Sometimes I feel somebody has come into the room and the smell changes, and it could be my imagination. It could be. I'm a writer, and so it could be my wild imagination, but I can sense something out there. So there are obviously there are negatives. If there is good, there is always going to be
for sure
a bad.
But when did that phase came in your life? When I asked you before that, when did horror stories and crime stories came in your life? When did you start thinking about writing horror stories? Where did that came?
So crime happened after I started. I created Savdhan India in 2012. Uske baad, for the next 6-7 years, I was living in a world of true crime 24/7.
Okay.
है ना, रिसर्च करता था, एपिसोड लिखता था, एपिसोड प्रोड्यूस करता था, क्रिएटिवली दिखाई देता, एडिट पे जाता. सो आई वाज लिविंग completely in that. In the meantime, I think 2015 odd is when I started, Fear Files came into my life, and I started writing and producing Fear Files as well. So that's a genre which I really enjoy. मेरी फटती है वैसे, खुद की बहुत फटती है.
Okay.
बंगाली में एक वर्ड है भीतू, मीन्स लाइक एकदम लाइक स्केर्ड. आवाज आता है तो मैं चौंक जाता हूँ उस टाइप का. बट आई एंजॉयड राइटिंग द एपिसोड्स बिकॉज आई लाइक्ड स्पूकिंग, कि इस मोमेंट पे क्या आएगा, या समथिंग इज वियर्ड हैपन, यू क्रिएट दैट एटमॉस्फेयर. सो आई रियली एंजॉयड प्रोड्यूसिंग एंड राइटिंग फियर फाइल्स. और बाय द टाइम 2019 में मेरा पहला किताब आ गया था. वो सुहेल माथुर से मिला मैंने, from the book Bakers, and he said write about true crime. Okay. So I wrote the book about serial killers of India, which was then launched by Anurag Kashyap, and it went on to become a bestseller. उसी दौरान मुझे लगा कि मैं हॉरर लिखूं या ना लिखूं, क्योंकि हॉरर एज अ जॉनरा it's a very difficult genre to write. It's not I guess all genres of writing have their challenges, but I didn't know whether I would manage to write it or not. But then I said give it a shot. Now, so to 2023 will see my first horror book coming out.
Okay.
So उसमें भी when I was writing it, क्योंकि मैं रात को बैठ के लिखता हूँ, तो मैं लिख रहा होता हूँ और सीन्स क्रिएट कर रहा होता हूँ तो अचानक खट खुट किचन से कुछ आवाज़ आता है. मैंने बोला भैया आज के लिए पैकअप, अब मैं जा रहा हूँ सोने. दैट्स व्हाई द बुक टुक अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम टू राइट, बिकॉज मैं खुद ही डर जाता था. तो ये भी अच्छा लगता था कि अरे यार ये भी तुमने ज़रूर अच्छा ही लिखा होगा कि तुम खुद डर रहे हो. तो वो एक था, बट वो आई वाज स्कैर्ड टू.
तो वो प्रोसेस, जैसे इतनी नई नई स्टोरीज, जो हॉरर स्टोरीज, कहाँ से, उसका प्रोसेस क्या था, इंस्पिरेशन, हाउ डू यू फाइंड दो स्टोरीज? समथिंग यू मेंशन मेटा फिक्शन और सम.
So metafiction is what my book is about, so I'll tell you about that as
Yes.
well. But Fear Files mein what we tried to do was take myths and legends from different cultures of India.
Okay.
You know, whether it's Bengal or whether it's South, or so we took different kinds of legends, urban myths and all of that, and spirits, and then we wove it into the thing. At one point Fear Files was based on true, so the narrator used to come and say मेरे साथ ऐसा हुआ था. So that was another format that we followed. So I sort of fell in love with horror as a genre because of producing and writing Fear Files. My book which is going to come out is, I call it metafiction, क्योंकि एक तो है कि when you hear about the haunted places of India, हमें पता है कि ये स्टोरी है कि यहाँ पे 10 मर्डर हुआ था, इसीलिए कहला जाता है कि ये 10 जो भूत है वो घूमता रहता है और एंड हॉन्ट करता रहता है इस जगह को. वो हमें पता है, बट हमें ये पता नहीं है कि वो सच है कि नहीं है. करेक्ट? क्या सचमुच हॉन्टिंग होता है कि नहीं है? So what I did was I took some of the most haunted places of India and I researched their backstory. जो myths and legends है वो क्या है? And then I put in my characters into that world. Right? Fictional characters into that world. It's like saying कि suppose this studio is haunted. राइट कि इधर 5 मर्डर हो चुका था और 5 भूत रहते हैं यहाँ पे. माई फिक्शनल कैरेक्टर्स एंटर्स दिस स्टूडियो एंड इन द मिडल ऑफ अ शूट थिंग स्टार्ट्स गोइंग रॉन्ग. So I'm marrying my fiction narrative with the urban legends and myths and the true backstory of a haunted place. So in Bangarh, I take the legend of Bangarh and I make it come alive when my fictional characters enter into Bangarh. Or whether it's a hotel in Mussoorie, there's a legend of 2 English women being mediums and calling spirits. So when my characters enter, then what happens? So the legend comes alive in front of them, or they interact with the characters from that backstory.
Correct.
So that's why I call it a metafiction.
Okay. Which is the most spookiest backstory you have heard about any place? When you research about these things and you take your character into that story, any story which you think you got chills, when you heard about that place or any particular thing?
एक तो है कि I'll never visit these places alone. The craziest and the spookiest backstory I think was उत्तराखंड में एक जगह है जिसका उस कॉटेज का नाम है एबट माउंट. एबट माउंट के साथ साथ और एक छोटा सा कोठी हुआ करता था जिसका नाम था मुक्ति कोठरी. और उस इट्स अ प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी नाउ. there is a little church, there is a graveyard, and there is this long construction, and which is known as the Abbot Mount. Or the story is, when the original owners left, the building was converted into a hospital. Okay. Now in that hospital there was a doctor. Now that doctor, according to the local people, he could predict the death of a patient, saying he will die on so and so date. And rightfully वो बंदा या बंदी जो भी है वो used to die. Before that person died, the doctor used to take the patient into a separate cottage. बाद में पता चला कि this doctor was a little sunky. He used to conduct medical experiments on these patients and kill them. That's how they died on the particular date.
The particular date.
करेक्ट. वो बोलता था कि ये 13 अगस्त को मरने वाला है ये बंदा. तो 11 तारीख को ले जाता था उसको उस कोठरी में. मेडिकल एक्सपेरिमेंट्स चालू होता था, ब्रेन खोलता था, ये करता था, वो करता था. 13th मर जाता था. सो वाह, ये डॉक्टर को पता है. So that used to be known as the Mukti Kotri because the soul used to get freed from there. So once the hospital closed down, they said that, the locals said that you can hear screaming patients and all of that in that place called Abbot Mount. And it's an eerie place because it's got this abandoned church, it's got the graveyard, all of that. So I thought that sometimes they say ki, humans are more scarier than ghosts. So at this point, a doctor like that is definitely a monster, right? And so then one of the stories is based in Abbot Mount in my book.
Okay, which is
where a group of college-going kids decide to go into Uttarakhand for 4-5 days for a holiday. And they get stuck in Abbot Mount for the night because it starts raining heavily and they get lost and all of that. And then what happens to that group in that one night when the hospital comes alive? So therefore I call it a metafiction because it's a marriage of fiction elements as well as the urban legends and myths.
You are writing crime stories and then on the same day you're writing horror stories. How do you manage that mentally?
So fortunately I have a switch in my head, which I can turn on, off, go into different genres, come out. So true crime is one side of it and the horror is one side of it. But if you look at true crime, there is a horror angle to it as well. How horrific are these crimes? A few days ago, there was a news about a man in Delhi who chopped his wife into some 32 bits and distributed it all over Delhi. That is horror.
Correct.
That is sheer horror. Or, for example, you've got Surinder Kohli, who's a servant in Delhi, Nithari, who cuts body parts of the victims and cooks and eats them. Isn't that horror?
It is.
Right? So it's a true crime and horror are like two sides of the same coin. Right? Sometimes the true crime becomes horrific. So it's a balancing act, and fortunately I have that switch in my head so I can then go.
So as you talked about your process, how do you research about these serial killers, and you have written many books, and there's one book which recently came out. I really want to talk about that, and I would like to tell my audience that there are really interesting topics which he has written on and the books. So please stay tuned and watch the next episode of The Haunted Show. I'm your host Shivang Rajpal. Like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you.